Hello gamers, I am back. I know it's been a while since I've uploaded to this channel specifically. I've just been very busy. I'm turning 20 soon, I'm moving out soon, I'm getting a new job next week. Just absolutely crazy the amount of new stuff that's happening in my life. Not only that, but I've also wanted to work on a video on my main channel, which I've been putting a lot of effort into. But today, I just want to yap. I just want a quick break from just all the stressful shit going on in my life. I want to yap about DPP SU, because fuck man, I love this metagame, and being able to just talk about and play this metagame is enough to keep my mind at ease with all the fucking crazy shit happening in my life. So for that, I'm thankful that I have something like this, right? I actually didn't make a video on DPP SU when we finished the tournament and got our official VR, because I just didn't really feel like it, I guess. The inspiration wasn't really there at the time. I feel like the main reason for that was, it was either probably life stuff, honestly, or it's just that I didn't really have enough new stuff to talk about. I think it was that, but the metagame has changed quite a lot since then, because we had the banning of Baton Pass, which is an extraordinarily impactful ban, because it means that Lopunny lacks a pivot move, and when the best Pokemon of the tier is nerfed, and it's still hilariously enough the best Pokemon of the tier, but when the best Pokemon of the tier is nerfed, that changes things. It really does. Let me open this. This is the official VR from when we finished the tournament. I have some opinion changes, and a lot of these are like based on how the metagame has evolved and whatnot. So these will all be very interesting to sort of go over, how the opinions have changed either based off of the Baton Pass ban or just based off of different metagame discoveries, because the metagame's never going to be solved. Also, one thing to mention, I do have my AC running right next to my PC, so if you hear that in the background, I apologize. It's definitely not a pleasant noise, but at the same time, it's summertime right now, and I'm not gonna turn this shit off just for an uncut video. I'm not fucking doing that. I'm not masochistic enough for that. But yeah, so I guess I'll be opening up my own personal viability ranking, and obviously the best Pokemon of the tier is still Lopunny. I do think that Lopunny actually does have some competition for best with Mightyena, especially since Lopunny's been nerfed a bit. Lopunny now has a lot more competition with Furret. Furret got very massively buffed due to the fact that Furret, unlike Lopunny, has a pivot move. Lopunny, however, still has more options than any other normal type. And ironically, now that Baton Pass is banned and it can't just cheese wins, the reason why I can't believe it took me this long to elaborate, but the reason why we banned Baton Pass was because Lopunny being able to pivot out of bad matchups like rock types and whatnot is fairly unhealthy. And then the main thing that pushed it over the edge, because if it was just that, then it would have acted like any other pivot move, right? And that's not broken. What pushed it over the edge was substitute passing. So it just substitutes on the thing that has to switch into it, because Lopunny's a really powerful fast breaker. Well, it's not. It's basically a breaker in this tier. It's just Lopunny's just really strong. Yeah, it just substitutes on the things that have to switch into it, and then it Baton Passes, so the thing gets a completely free switch. And often you can make that free switch something that is a sweeper, like Croconaw or Pupitar, that threatened to end the game as a whole. And that was just completely unbalanced. So yeah, that's the main reason we banned Baton Pass. We also banned Baton Pass due to cheesy strategies, because we ended up discovering that Light Clay is really good, but Light Clay doesn't really get pushed to its full potential until you start mixing it in with Baton Pass. And that was another thing that just really increased the cheese value of Baton Pass. So that's why we banned Baton Pass. As for Lopunny, now that Baton Pass is banned, Lopunny has ironically kind of become better in some ways. Sure, it faces more competition because it can't pivot anymore, but it can actually use its other options now, which include Healing Wish. Yeah, so it can use Healing Wish, which is really good on hyper offense teams, because it can bring one of your sweepers back, or one of your breakers back. You can use Thunder Wave. Thunder Wave is really good against Ghastly, which is the one thing that hardwalls Lopunny. Pretty much completely debilitates Ghastly. It's also just generally really strong, not only against Choice Scarfers who want to revenge kill Lopunny, but also against just Pokemon that want to switch into it in general. Like Sudowoodo, even though Sudowoodo is slow as shit, Sudowoodo doesn't like being paralyzed because it means that it has less free turns than it would have beforehand. Which, ironically, if part of the reason why Graveler has a niche to begin with is because it's immune to paralysis. Because being paralysis vulnerable is surprisingly a big weakness for anything, regardless of its speed stat. And then other options that Lopunny has, Switcheroo sets are really strong. Lopunny has the unique benefit, Klutz of course means that it can wait to Switcheroo with like Flame Orb. And because of how Flame Orb works, it's the only Pokemon that can consistently burn Pupitar who has Shed Skin, which, again, pretty solid option to have, right? And then, I'm trying to think what other sets does it have. Oh yeah, Encore. So yeah, lead Lopunny I think is the best lead now, and the reason why is because Encore disrupts so much shit. Because of Encore, you can no longer Stealth Rock on Lopunny. Because of Encore, you can no longer Protect on Lopunny, which means that something like lead Machop, lead Prinplup, they're nerfed because of Lopunny. Now running Encore on the lead slot instead of Baton Pass. Which just goes to show how Lopunny having more options can make it scarier in a lot of ways, even though it can't cheese teams with Baton Pass substitute anymore. So yeah, Lopunny's in a very, very good spot this meta. I think the main Pokemon that has competition with Lopunny is Mightyena. Mightyena is similarly very strong. It's a very good utility Pokemon with Taunt, Heal Bell, Roar. It's basically the Landorus Therian of this tier in that you can run it both offensive and defensive, and it can perform both roles really well. It has the offensive support role with Taunt, it has the defensive sets, and then it has this Howl sets. Howl is the best sweeper in the entire tier in my opinion. Nothing even comes close to how strong Howl is, which is ridiculous, right? It sounds stupid, but Howl Mightyena is the best sweeper in this tier. Because Intimidate, it has the bulk. With its stats, it has the bulk to just keep on setting up. Miss Angelic has tried, what member of the council has tried using physically defensive Howl, and that's done surprisingly well. It's so annoying, because Mightyena has Sucker Punch as well. Because of Sucker Punch, any offensive set becomes really strong. It's one of the most reliable ways of revenge killing faster Pokemon like Lopunny without needing to pigeonhole yourself with Choice Scarf. So Mightyena is the best priority user in the tier. And then, because like after like 2 Howls, Mightyena pretty much just wins the game after that in most situations. Of course, getting it to set up can be a little tough because obviously every team is going to be trying as hard as they can to not let that sweep happen, right? But yeah, Mightyena, phenomenal fucking Pokemon. It's not even close. I can see some debate with Mightyena S-, mainly because it can be a little hard for it to do everything that it wants to do. 4-move slot syndrome definitely does hurt Mightyena, but it also hurts Lopunny, so I think they're about on par. In my opinion, the only S- that I'd have in this metagame is Sudowoodo. Sudowoodo is a very strong Pokemon. It's a very strong... Yeah, it was S- in the latest official VR as well. Yeah, Sudowoodo is very, very strong. It's a very good wall breaker. It's a very good defensive Pokemon. It can even be a good sweeper with Rock Polish. You can customize your Sudowoodo to do well on pretty much any team style you want. The main issue with Sudowoodo is just the fact that it's slow, which will hamper its ability to deal with like water types, for instance. But generally, you'd have a defensive core that plans around that. So yeah, very, very strong as always. I think at this point, I'm not going to go through it by viability ranking order, but by role order. So we'll talk about normal resist real quick. The only normal resist that I want to talk about right now is Bronzor. Bronzor I put in A. Is a very strong alternative to Sudowoodo. While Sudowoodo fits on every style of team, Bronzor is mostly a Pokemon you see just on bulky offense and balance. You don't see this on more traditional offenses or hyper offenses at all. Stall isn't real in this tier, by the way. The tier's a little too offensive for Stall to be real. But yeah, Bronzor has a lot of really solid traits over Sudowoodo. It can be a win condition with Calm Mind. It's immune to Toxic. It's immune to Spikes, which means that like it's immune to Earthquake as well. Its typing is fucking amazing. It has a much better special defense stat as well. So if you want to play the long game and have a more sturdy wall, Bronzor is better than Sudowoodo. Obviously, though, Sudowoodo is better because Sudowoodo has a much better offensive presence. It's a lot less passive. But generally, a lot of teams are fine trading that offensive prowess for more defensive reliability. And the fact that a lot of Pokemon just straight up can't touch Bronzor is really good. The fact that Bronzor can take advantage of that with like Calm Mind, Toxic. It means that Bronzor is never as much of a sitting duck as you'd assume it would be. Yeah, I think that Bronzor is very, very strong. I guess for now I'll talk about the A+ Pokemon. I guess the most logical ones to talk about first would be Lumineon and Pidgeot, because Lumineon and Pidgeot are fairly similar. Lumineon honestly feels like it could be S-. I think I actually did rate it S- on my personal because I contributed to the VR and I'm a part of the council because no one else, there's not very many people play this tier. As long as you're active, you're generally going to be decent enough at the tier, right? Right now I'd have it in A+ though. It has a lot of good sets. The main one is an offensive pivot. The fact this is the best U-turn spammer in the tier. It's not even close. Amazing speed tier of 91. It has no stealth rock weakness. Its speed is very good for letting it revenge kill things. U-turn is obviously one of the best moves in the game. There are other sets too. Choice Scarf is very good. It's the fastest Choice Scarfer in the tier, and it's not Stealth Rock weak either. So in my opinion, Lumineon is very by far the best Choice Scarfer in the tier. The only Choice Scarfer I think comes close is Pidgeot, but Pidgeot's Stealth Rock weak. And then Lumineon also has a defensive set. I don't think defensive Lumineon is a super duper reliable set, mainly just because it doesn't have any reliable recovery. Your defensive Lumineon's generally not going to last long term, but if you're not worried about it lasting, then it can be a good option. It's not a bad set by any means. Pidgeot is very similar to Lumineon, however, it's a little bit more of a glass cannon with the Stealth Rock weakness, but trades that for much better offensive prowess. Pidgeot is a better breaker than Lopunny. However, unlike Lopunny, Pidgeot doesn't have coverage to deal with Sudowoodo. But a huge part of what makes Pidgeot so good, in my opinion, is the fact that it has a set that it can run for any type of team. Hyper offense teams obviously want the choice band or choice scarf set. Both sets are very good. Pidgeot also has the very useful utility of pursuit trapping. I don't think it's the best pursuit trapper, but Pidgeot can pursuit trap, and that is very good. And then, of course, another trait of Pidgeot is the fact that it can go with the fact that it has Roost, Roost is a very good move. You can run it on more offensive sets on like bulky offense teams, or you can run a defensive Pidgeot set on balanced teams that, because Pidgeot has Brave Bird to deal with the otherwise problematic Meta-type matchup, which very useful. I found defensive Pidgeot to be a genuinely pretty decent set. And then, sorry, I just got a text from a friend about something important. I'll finish recording. No, my friend's at work. He's on a time limit. All right, I'm gonna, I'm gonna respond to my friend's text real quick, because it's important enough. Okay, I responded to my friend. Sure, that's such a BKC moment. But, I mean, the text I got is very important, though. I couldn't ignore it. Anyway, but yeah, Roost is really good. And for me is probably the main distinguishing factor that puts Pidgeot ahead of other Pokemon in A. I guess for a point of comparison, Furret has gotten... So Furret was B+ on the last VR. Due to the fact that Lopunny can no longer pivot, Furret is A rank now. Yeah, Furret got enormously buffed by the fact that Lopunny can't pivot anymore. Because now that Furret can pivot, Furret is now the only non-Stealth Rock weak normal type to have a pivot move, which is huge. It means that Pidgeot can struggle to last in a game, but Furret doesn't really have that issue because it doesn't have a Stealth Rock weakness. Because of this, it's a more reliable Pursuit Trapper. It's a more reliable U-turn spammer. Obviously, it doesn't hit as hard as Pidgeot, and it also doesn't have Roost, which means that it can't take advantage of more passive teams the way that Pidgeot can. Pidgeot's a much higher reward Pokemon, but I feel like Furret is arguably more consistent. And then of course, Lopunny has much better options overall. But if you only really want a U-turn spammer with Pursuit Trapping to sort of aid with like a Curse Slack sweep, for instance, then Furret is a fantastic Pokemon for that. Furret, in my opinion, is the biggest winner of the Baton Pass ban. This thing got enormously buffed by that. For now, though, I want to finish off A+ before we go into A and talk about Octillery. Octillery is the quintessential wall breaker of the tier. Octillery just does a lot of damage. Substitute can make it pretty hard to deal with. It's really bulky. Because the thing with most wall breakers is that they're frail, or that they have a lot of competition from other Pokemon. Octillery doesn't have either of those issues. It's just flat out fantastic all around. Thunder Wave is an enormous thing for it because it means that if something that outspeeds it is going to switch in, it can just Thunder Wave it, and oopsie, now Octillery is faster. Substitute's really good too for taking advantage of more passive teams. Psychic is also a very good option for hitting Tentacool, which is an extremely important matchup. So yeah, Octillery has something for basically everything that isn't Munchlax. It's honestly it's the best breaker in the tier for sure. It's very, very good at what it does. And then, what do I want to talk about next? I guess I brought it up earlier, but yeah, Munchlax I think is the best special wall in the tier. Because unlike something like Tentacle, which can fold to a Psychic. Nothing that Octillery has hits Munchlax. The only thing that Octillery can do is Waterfall. But people have been experimenting more with physically defensive Munchlax, mostly due to the fact that it can make it easier to start a Curse Sweep, and it already has plenty of special defense as is. And because of that, Octillery really doesn't check Munchlax anymore. Munchlax has a lot of really good options. It's a good Pursuit Trapper. It has really good coverage all around. Is not really useful as a breaker because it's just too slow and unfortunately kind of frail without investment for you to really use it as a bulky attacker, in my opinion. If you want to use a bulky attacker, I just think Exploud is better for that. Which, speaking of which, for now, I'll just put Exploud here for now. Because Exploud is just kind of like Munchlax, but it hits harder, but it also is nowhere near as defensively capable. Which is weird, because like raw stats-wise, Exploud is perfectly fine, right? Yeah, because Exploud's defenses are actually quite good. Well, actually, they're more just okay. Yeah, Munchlax is a better wall than Exploud is. Munchlax also has Curse. So which means that, like, Exploud is mostly just the breaker variant, while Munchlax is a much better defensive role, which is why I think Munchlax is better than Exploud. But yeah, Curselax is really good too. Curselax requires pursuit support, but if you can get the pursuit support, it is, honest to God, one of the most disgusting win conditions in the entire tier. Part of why I rate Ferret so highly is because it's such a good Munchlax partner. Like, if you're running Curselax, then I think Ferret's kind of a required partner for it. And then, yeah, so Exploud is a breaker, right? So I'll put all the other breakers here. So that would be Flareon, Meditite, Seviper, and Pikachu. Yeah, I'm just rating all the mid-speed breakers at once. And mid-speed breaker is kind of a term that I feel like is surprisingly kind of unique to DPPSU. These are the Pokemon who kind of have some issues of speed or frailty, but are very, very good at breaking. And breaking is really good right now because balance teams are becoming a lot better as the meta is developing. Which means that I could actually see some of these breakers, mainly Meditite, Pikachu, and maybe Seviper rising. Because of these breakers, Exploud and Flareon actually used to rate in B+, but they're just in a really good meta right now, so I think they're deserving of A-. Flareon especially has some really, really strong breaking prowess, because Superpower plus Fire Stab is basically the same coverage as Combuskin. Combuskin was banned because of how good it was at breaking things. However, unlike Combuskin, Flareon doesn't have a special fighting priority stab, nor does it have a defensive typing that allows it to be not Stealth Rock weak. The Stealth Rock weakness is a huge part of what keeps Flareon in check. But yeah, Meditite is very good because genuinely fighting Psychic is one of the best offensive stab combos in the entire game. Almost nothing switches into this. The only thing, which is actually the reason why Slowpoke has a niche, because I may as well rate Slowpoke now, fuck it, why not? Yeah, the main reason why Slowpoke has a niche is because it's one of the only things that resists both stabs, while also being physically defensive. Otherwise, Slowpoke is a little on the passive side, but genuinely there are quite a few balance teams that would like having Slowpoke just for that matchup. That's how important beating Meditite on balance teams is. And of course, Pikachu is very, very strong as well. there are very, very few electric immunities. Yeah, there are very, very few electric immunities. Electric immunities really aren't run all that much. Just wanted. Yeah, electric immunities really aren't run that much because ground types aren't an amazing meta at the moment. Which means that Pikachu just feasts on that. Encore is really good for preventing something from just being passive on it, right? Yeah, Pikachu is very, very good. The main thing that drops Pikachu back is the fact that it gets outsped by the 91s. Not only that, but it's also just extremely frail. Like, everything OHKOs this. And then the Viper is also really good. Unlike, well, Meditite has Bullet Punch, but Viper has Sucker Punch, and Sucker Punch is stronger. So the fact that this is a mid-speed breaker that has a priority move is huge. Not only that, but it also has a really good move pool. I think it has the best offensive stats overall out of all of these. I might be wrong though. It can feel a little worse at breaking things compared to others, mainly because it needs to go mixed if it wants to hit everything that it wants. Because Bronzor walls it without it running Flamethrower. Because it usually tends to run physical sets with Flamethrower to hit Bronzor. Because special sets don't really have as much coverage to them. But yeah, the mid-speed breakers are really good. And I'm sure at least one of these will probably end up rising to A. Because these are all balance killers, and balance is getting better. So running one of these Pokemon is going to become just better, right? Speaking of balance, though, I think that the best balanced Pokemon, the one that is required on almost every balance team, is Tentacool. Tentacool is the best special wall, is not nearly as consistent of a special wall as Munchlax is, but I'd say it's probably the most impactful special wall in the tier. You see it a lot more than you see Munchlax, at least. Toxic Spikes are disgusting. Toxic Spikes are the reason why it's this high. Not only that, but it has rapid spin support. Knockoff is good against opposing balance teams. 70 base speed is a pretty decent speed tier for a defensive Pokemon. Just like, Tentacool is really, really, really good right now. Another Pokemon that I think is a very, very good just shoe-in pick for balance teams is Wormadam Sand. I don't quite think Wormadam Sand is A-. We've only recently started experimenting with it more. Wormadam Sand has been rated at B+ for the longest time, as just B for the longest time, because everyone acknowledges, oh yeah, its stats are good, its typing is good, move pool is unfortunately not great, but this has enough going on for it to be B rank. But then we actually started using it, and while it can kind of struggle to fit on anything offensive, it fits in like a fucking glove on balance. It's a very, very hard Pokemon to pass up on balance, because it can kind of take Meta-type, and it can also take Pikachu. And balance teams really, really struggle against Pikachu. And Wormadam helps with that matchup. Wormadam also has Sucker Punch, which is very, very strong utility. It's very good at spamming Earthquake as well. Its Earthquake hits quite hard. Then of course Toxic exists as well. A huge part of why I think that Wormasand is better than Marshtomp, who I have rated at B, is because Wormasand, unlike Marshtomp, doesn't have to fear Sudowoodo as much, which means that I can just click an Earthquake on Sudowoodo. Marshtomp has to fear Sudowoodo because Sudowoodo has Wood Hammer, which just completely destroys Marshtomp. Which, unfortunately, Sudowoodo's very existence really, really hampers Marshtomp's viability, but Marshtomp is by far the best Pikachu check in the tier, and that for sure makes it worthwhile on a team. It also just has really good stats, and Stealth Rock, which Wormasand doesn't have Stealth Rock for some reason. So I could actually see where Marshtomp fitting on some balances very, very comfortably. I'm actually kind of tempted to raise it up to B plus as well. Because Marshtomp has a better stab combination. It doesn't have Sucker Punch, unfortunately, but it has better coverage. And Stealth Rock. I think Marshtomp B plus is actually fine. Mostly just because, like, checking Pikachu is something that balanced teams absolutely have to do. Because balanced teams are really bad against Pikachu. Because Pikachu is just a very, very strong breaker. The two biggest problem matchups for balance are Meditite and Pikachu, in my opinion. Flareon's a problem matchup too, but every team generally has a water type in it. So as long as you have a Tentacool, which most balanced teams do, then you're generally going to be okay against Flareon. So, I don't know, where do I want to go next? I'll look at the official VR. Oh yeah, we may as well knock out the rest of A. I think the most obvious Pokemon to be here is Ghastly. Like, no shit, it's the ghost type. It's Stonewall's Lopunny. Unfortunately, the other normals just Pursuit Trap the fuck out of it, so it's not amazing there. Although, Munchlax doesn't often run Pursuit, which means that Ghastly actually has a really good matchup against most Munchlax variants. Ghastly can also fuck with Pursuit users as well by going for Substitute or Pain Split, Will-O-Wisp. It can't really Destiny Bond, but it can Will-O-Wisp and it can Pain Split. Honestly, though, the main thing that makes Ghastly so good is the fact that it Stonewalls Lopunny. That is genuinely that important. Not only that, but Ghastly is also just strong in its own right. It hits very hard. It has a very good speed tier. Like, Ghastly is a very solid offensive threat in its own right. I guess the alternate ghost type then would be Duskull. Duskull I used to have rated at C-. If you look at the current official VR, it is at C-. But because balance is on the rise, and because Ghastly is complete dogshit on balance teams, because it's frail, Duskull is here now, in my opinion, and Duskull even has potential to be here, which is insane. Yeah, so Duskull is very, very good. Very, very good on balance. It is unfortunately completely unusable on any other Scylla team. On every other Scylla team, it's here. But on balance, it's genuinely quite good. It's mainly good at walling. It Stonewalls Lopunny, of course, which obviously Ghastly does as well. But it's also a better spin blocker because it has better bulk overall. Spin blocking is very important because Budew is on the rise. Pineco is a good spiker as well. And because of my brain turned off. Yeah, Duskull's good though. Like, it's immune to spikes and toxic spikes. That's very important. It hardwalls Lopunny, and unfortunately doesn't do. It actually does really well into Furret, which is surprising, because even though Furret is a Pursuit Trapper, Duskull doesn't really fear the Pursuit at all. It just clicks Will-O-Wisp on Furret, and Furret is just not a bad matchup for it. The only normal types that are bad matchups for it are Exploud, because Exploud runs Crunch, and Pidgeot, who has Brave Bird. For those matchups, though, you can just pair it with something else. Sudowoodo is a very good pairing. Bronzor is a very good pairing. Another really good pairing is Bastiodon, which I have in B. Bastiodon is really good because Bastiodon just has unlike Bronzor and unlike Sudowoodo, Bastiodon is uniquely good against Mightyena because it resists the Dark type, and it's also very good against Ghastly, which Bronzor and Sudowoodo have shit Ghastly matchups. Bastiodon beats Ghastly, which I know only 2 matchups sounds not amazing, but that is honestly enough to make Bastiodon good on balance teams, because balance teams, all they really need to have is good defensive synergy. And the reason why I have Bastiodon rated as high as B, while Duskull is not rated as high, despite the fact that they're both basically only good on balance, is the fact that Duskull is just can kind of like the Duskull Actually, I might want to talk myself into making Duskull B. Fuck it, Duskull's B. I'm trying to justify in my head why I don't have Bastiodon and Duskull in the same rank. The only argument I really have is that I think Bastiodon is a step above Corsola and Magcargo. Corsola and Magcargo are very similar to Sudowoodo in terms of what they check defensively. It's just that Corsola and Magcargo are more passive. They're not as defensively good as Bronzor either, but they do have reliable recovery, which means that they do last long term. Well, Corsola does. Magcargo is Stealth Rock weak, so it's just kind of taking an L there. But unlike Corsola, Magcargo has Flame Bloody and Lava Plume to spread burns, which means it's kind of luck reliant on if it's going to even get a burn, which is why I don't personally love Magcargo. The thing with Corsola and Magcargo, they actually could easily rise. I'm just not as high on them right now because I don't think they do enough different from Sudowoodo or Bronzor for me to run them over them. And I also think they're just more passive than Sudowoodo without the sort of game-winning potential that Bronzor can bring. So I think they're both a step below. I guess if we're talking about something that checks Mightyena, then one of the best Mightyena checks, I'd say probably the best Mightyena check is Magnemite. Do I put it in A-? I kinda want to put it in A, but that's too high. The reason why it's too high is because outside of the Mightyena matchup, it's pretty shit defensively. The main thing you're running Magnemite for is the fact that it's good against Pidgeot, it's good against Mightyena, it's unfortunately bad against everything else. I think it's okay. Yeah, Furret tends to run Aqua Tail for Magcargo instead of Brick Break for Magnemite. Brick Break might end up becoming more popular if Bronzor ends up trending more than Magcargo. But yeah, I really like Magnemite right now. Like it's probably the single best defensive answer to Mightyena outside of your own Mightyena. And it hits really hard. It has base 95 special attack in a tier where ground types aren't really ran that much. So yeah, this thing's crazy. You can even run non-choice sets. I mostly run choice specs to maximize the damage. But leftovers means that it's a better long-term answer against Mightyena. Leftovers also means that you can it's harder to run one of these ground types against it. I guess while we're at it, I'm going to talk about the remaining two ground types, which would be Pupitar and Vibrava. Pupitar is a setup sweeper. Unlike Croconaw, I have an A because it is a very consistent setup sweeper. Like, it's just very, very consistent at what it does. Because it's bulky. It has a priority move. It has Torrent to boost its priority move. It is just disgusting, right? Pupitar is slightly more specific because unless you are Dragon Dancing against a normal type, you are you're not lasting because Rock Ground is a very shit defensive typing against anything that isn't a normal type. Not only that, but it also doesn't have priority, so it's not as reliable or consistent of a sweeper as Croconaw is. However, normal resist is very good. If you want to have that on your sweeper, then Pupitar is a very solid alternative to Croconaw. And then Vibrava is a Choice Scarf user. Vibrava is very comparable, if not kind of equal, to Mankey. Mankey, I'd argue, is better offensively because it super effectively hits the very normal and rock-type heavy metagame, which is huge. Vibrava, though, has better defensive utility because it's immune to electric, it's immune to ground, it also has a rock resist. Well, they both have rock resistance. So you run Mankey for the more explosive damage, but you also run Vibrava for the slightly better defensive utility. I guess the main reason why Mankey and Vibrava are rated lower is because the best choice scarfers are Luminion and Pidgeot, who outspeed them. However, if you want a more mid-speed choice scarf user, then Mankey and Vibrava are fine picks. They do pretty good at their they do a pretty good job at their job. Even if they cry every single time a Scarf Luminion or Scarf Pidgeot enters chat. Or Scarf Ferret too. Scarf Ferret's also really good. Also, another thing about Ferret is that it has Trick, which means that its choice item sets are a lot better because of Trick. I guess since we have Slowpoke down here, I may as well mention Drowsy. Drowsy is an alternative to Slowpoke who has more special defense, has Wish support. Otherwise, it's worse than Slowpoke though, because Slowpoke just has better stats for this metagame. Wish is also generally worse than Slack Off is. But Drowsy is an option that I've seen before, and it has actually done some stuff. Because it has special defense, it's surprisingly okay, and Octillery as well. Drowsy is a very weird Pokemon that roll compresses a lot of stuff, but it has a place in my opinion. I mentioned it with Duskull how good like ground immunity is, and it's because I think Budew is on the rise. Budew is very good on balanced teams and against balanced teams. Balanced teams can struggle to break Budew because Budew has Natural Cure and Synthesis for healing, which means that it's generally going to get its spikes up. Budew is a very good partner for Duskull, because Duskull does a very good job at keeping rocks away against Tentacool. So yeah, I'd say that Budew is at a pretty good spot now. I'd say that Budew is generally better than Pineco is as a... generally better than Pineco is as a spiker. Pineco is better on more offensive teams though, because Pineco has Explosion, Rapid Spin, Stealth Rock as well if you want to roll compress that. Pineco is very good on hyper offense. It's also fairly good on bulky offense as well. I'd say that Budew is also pretty good on bulky offense. But unlike Pineco, which can't really be ran on balance, Budew can be ran on balance, and for me, that's a distinguishing enough factor to where I think Budew is just straight up better than Pineco. Pineco's still really good though, at doing what it does. And then, where do I want to take this next? Let's see if there's any A-rank ones that I've just ignored. Okay, there is. I can't believe it took me this long to talk about it. But yeah, Cherrim is the best grass type. It's very good at what it does. Like Cherrim is Cherrim's good defensively, it's good offensively. You can kind of just customize it to do anything you want for a team, really. It's just a very consistent, very easy fit for a lot of teams, and it's a very, very good part of the metagame. Cherrim has been so good as a grass type that there hasn't really been any competition that popped up until very recently. So Sun teams are really good. Sun has very good setters in Onyx, Sudowoodo, Mightyena, and Lopunny. Pidgeot's a good setter as well. Which means that Sun teams are now just viable. So, in my opinion, Sunflora and Weepinbell are both genuinely good Pokemon. Sun teams just work. Now, Weepinbell is kind of a Sun exclusive right now. It kind of only functions on Sun, in my opinion. Sunflora, I think, has actual potential to rise up to B+, because Sunflora is, unlike Cherrim, Sunflora does a lot more damage than Cherrim does. Leaf Storm is disgusting. Earth Power is really good coverage. Sludge Bomb you can use to even hit opposing Cherrim really hard. So Sunflora has a lot of potential as a bulky breaker outside of Sun teams. But my efforts to explore that haven't been extremely successful yet, so I'm mainly just ranking Sunflora here due to how good it is on Sun. And it is very good on Sun. In my opinion, the Sun fraud is unfortunately Tropius. Tropius I just don't think is amazing on Sun teams. The reason for that is that it doesn't hit nearly as hard as Weepinbell and Sunflora do. Weepinbell has Weather Ball over Tropius. Weepinbell also has better offenses over Tropius. Weepinbell, I think, is even faster than Tropius. Tropius is just ass. And then, of course, it obviously doesn't have the breaking power that Sunflora does, too. I don't even think it's as good defensively as Sunflora is as well, because that 4x Ice weakness is terrible. It can go for a Swords Dance sweep, which Weepinbell does better, because it has Sucker Punch. But it is technically something that Tropius has some niche value on Sun, but generally on Sun teams, I think you're going to prefer running Flareon for the extra fire damage, and Cherrim, because Cherrim is very good Cherrim is, unlike Tropius, lessens your terrible matchup to Scarf Luminion. Scarf Luminion is the best check to Sun, because it just spams Ice Beam on all the Sunmons who can't outspeed it. Also, Heat Rock is not banned. That's the reason why Sun is viable in this year. Damp Rock is, though, which is why Rain isn't really seen a lot. However, Damp Rock, despite the fact that Damp Rock isn't banned, Rain is still decent, and Huntail is actually quite a good Pokemon in my opinion. I can see the argument for Huntail being a B+ instead, because it kind of is more niche. You're basically only running Huntail on Rain teams. Yeah, actually, Huntail B+, I think I stand by that now. Because the Pokemon I have in A- are just really genuinely solid. The Pokemon I have in B+ are genuinely really good too. I think Huntail's more comparable to the Pokemon I have there. Huntail's mostly a Rain exclusive. It's a very good Rain Sweeper though. And it's also... and it also has some niches outside of Rain, because unlike Octillery, it has Sucker Punch, which means that Huntail generally runs physical sets better than Octillery does. It also has Ice Vein, which Octillery doesn't have. So I guess, what do I want to talk about next for this list? We'll look at the A- here. Oh damn, the only Pokemon that I missed here is Kecleon. Kecleon, I would say, is an A- one. Kecleon is a Pokemon that has seen a lot of experimentation lately. There was a time period where I put Kecleon in B+ for a bit, but I think Kecleon's back to A-. It's been seen used as a lead. Lead sets are really solid. Like offensive lead sets, they do their job quite well. And then the defensive set used to just be Stealth Rock, Thunder Wave, Return, Recover, which is a fairly passive set. However, if you use another rocker on your team, usually on your balance teams, that frees up a move slot for Kecleon to run something like Sucker Punch or Knock Off instead, and that just makes Kecleon, and in my opinion, the less passive you make your Kecleon, the generally better it's going to be at being a defensive Pokemon. And it's through seeing that experimentation that my hope that I've been more positive on Kecleon lately. I also do think it's a Pokemon that just inherently suffers from 4 move slot syndrome more than its cousin Munchlax, though. I just don't think Kecleon's as good as Munchlax. It's still really good, though. Oh yeah, right, a Pokemon that's very comparable to Kecleon is Clefairy. Clefairy is basically just Kecleon, but it trades some bulk and some utility moves. It trades bulk and offensive prowess with like Sucker Punch and Return, right? For Magic Guard. And Magic Guard's a busted ability. Spikes are getting better. Toxic Spikes are very good. Toxic is very good. So it means that Clefairy has a genuine place on balanced teams. I generally think that Kecleon's a better Pokemon, which is why I don't quite think that Clefairy is a part of the tier yet. But Clefairy is like a real option that I do think is genuinely worth considering, and every time I've seen it, it's done well. So yeah. Oh yeah, right, that's something I haven't talked about yet. The leads. I think that the leads are all B rank ones, so Onyx, Primplup, and Machop. I'm pretty sure it's just those. I guess Abra. Abra's the only lead that I put in B+. So I'll explain all of that now. So the reason why I rate Abra at B+ instead of B is because Abra has stuff going on outside of the lead slot. Abra is not only a very good lead, it's mostly used as a lead, but it's also good at Choice Scarf. I'm sure even like some more traditional offensive sets could work too. It's very frail though. And then I think the only lead that has potential outside of the lead slot is Primplup. And I actually have seen Primplup outside of the lead slot. And Primplup is generally regarded as B+ nowadays. So fuck it, sure, I'll put Primplup here. So yeah, Primplup is yeah, because Primplup is basically just Octillery with a Stealth Rock, which means that it's usually used as a lead, but you can use it outside of the lead slot if you want. It also has Torrent, and Torrent's really good. Unlike Octillery, it also has Agility too if you want to go for that sweep. Agility sets haven't really been tested yet though. It is a potential option though. Then in terms of the other leads, Machop and Onyx are basically just leads, but they fulfill their roles really well, and they do see a lot of usage in the lead slot. Machop is basically just does what Machamp does in OU. It's not nearly as good because its stats aren't all that great, but it is also really fucking annoying. I know some people who absolutely hate Machop in this metagame, and I don't even blame them. This thing's a fucking menace. And then Onyx is basically what you would expect, basically what it does in Little Cup, right? Fast taunt lead with Stealth Rock, which those are just good traits for hyper offense teams. So Onyx tends to be pretty consistent at what it does. It also has Explosion too, which is fantastic momentum. So I guess we'll take a look at other stuff that could be ranked. Oh yeah, right, one Pokemon that I completely forgot about. Chatot is the potential Pokemon. Chatot has a lot of potential to be something really good, but no one uses it. But like, if you look at its stats and its move pool, there's no way that Chatot isn't a part of the tier. Faces a lot of competition from Pidgeot, but at the same time, it shares Pidgeot's speed tier, it has Nasty Plot, it has Encore, and it shares Roost. But like, I've mainly only used Chatot on Scream's offense teams, because Chatot is unfortunately pretty frail with the Stealth Rock weakness, but it did well on those. So like, Chatot's a Pokemon that's very much worthy of experimentation. Chatot also has Taunt, which means that it actually could have a niche as a lead. It's not on this template, but I actually think that Apom has a tiny niche as a lead as well, because it does what Lopunny does, while also having Taunt, and Taunt's very important. But I think now we're just onto the more niche mons. Yeah, so I guess we'll talk about the mons that I think are B- caliber. We'll start with the spinners. Staryu and Wartortle, I think, are the most likely Pokemon for me to rise up. Because they, because Spin is going to be a lot better in a tier that has, in a tier where spikes are starting to trend upward, and slower team styles that are a lot better. I'd say I'm more convinced on Staryu, because Staryu has a very defined and unique role as an offensive spinner, right? Wartortle is less unique. It faces a lot of competition from Tentacool, who has a better typing, and a better move pool. Wartortle does have better stats though, which means that it's generally going to be getting spins off more consistently. I can definitely see the world where Wartortle ends up being a lot more consistent. We just haven't quite gotten there in the meta yet. It is something I'm very willing to explore though. I'm actually quite ready to explore it relatively soon. Honestly, there's nothing else here that screams. So we'll start with Pokemon that I think are C+. Anorith, I think, is C+ now. Like, Onix has fully cemented itself as the HO lead, and Anorith is a lead that beats Onix. Because it outspeeds Onix, which means that Onix can't taunt it, and it also rapid spins away Onix's rocks. So if you want an anti-Onix lead for your own hyper offense teams, then Anorith is like actually a decent option. And it doesn't really offer as much as the Pokemon I have in B-, but like it's a decent option. I am willing to explore it in the future, although I haven't quite gotten around to it yet. I guess Yanma's another easy one. Yanma's a very good anti-offense Pokemon, because it gives you Protect, Speed Boost, and Uno, the frail hyper offense team, kinda can't really deal with this. Yanma's kind of a matchup fish though. It's basically only good against a hyper offense, because it just doesn't hit that hard. But it does have a niche, and it does work. It's really good against Sun teams, I'll say that much. Just any type of like offense, right? I think Seaking also belongs in C+. Because Seaking is a water type with Mega Horn, which hits grass type super effectively, which actually is relevant. It used to not be when Ivysaur was the prominent grass type, but now Ivysaur is in ZU. So it hits Cherrim and Sunflora super effectively, which is pretty big. Hitting Sunflora super effectively will be very important if Sunflora ever becomes more viable in the future, which unfortunately hasn't quite happened yet, but I think it will happen soon. Oh, and then an obvious C+ for me is Graveler. Graveler is very similar to Sudowoodo. It does very, very similar things to what Sudowoodo does. It's just the main thing that has going for it is the fact that it has Stab Earthquake, which is really strong, obviously, which means it doesn't have to rely on like Stone Miss as much. It also has Thunder Wave immunity, so it's immune to paralysis. That's very, very strong. As I mentioned earlier, that's kind of the only reason why I feel like Graveler's niche is as defined as it is. Otherwise, it's very, very hard to use Graveler over Sudowoodo. Like, in terms of how often you use Graveler, I put it like here in C, but in terms of how strong it actually is to bring in a game, I think C+ is fine. Oh yeah, since we mentioned Duskull, I feel like Coughing is a pretty good Duskull alternative, and the fact that it works better on more like bulky offense teams since it can boom. Duskull's better though, but hey, at least Coughing has that tiny niche. And then I guess I'll just start going in order here. Ariados was rated C- in the official VR. I don't quite know how much I agree with that. I'd say, yeah, I guess it's C-. It's just, if you want a Toxic Spiker, then like use Tentacool. But unlike Tentacool, Ariados does have a physical defense stat. It also has priority moves for revenge killing, So, like, it's not terrible. It has a tiny niche. It can do things, I guess. Yeah, so then Aron. Aron I typically have ranked in UR. Aron just... I don't really see the reason to use it. It's a normal resistant breaker that can only switch in to Pidgeot and Mightyena. Okay, it does switch into Mightyena. Actually, okay, yeah, that's enough for a C-. I don't know what balls I was tripping on. This thing is just barely good enough to be ranked. And then Butterfree got hard nerfed with the sleep ban. This thing's UR. Someone's doing some sort of maintenance in the area because they live in an apartment complex. So if you hear that noise, then, like, I'm sorry. I'm as annoyed about it as you are. Chinchou, I think, is a step above the Pokemon that I have in C-. Like, it can... Honestly, I feel like coughing legit is as well. Like, the Chinchou is a Pokemon that is a water type, so it functions as a water type, right? But it also has Electric Stab to hit other water types with, which means it's good against Crocodile, it's good against Huntail, it's good against Octillery. It's unfortunately pretty ass against Lumineon, but, like, Chinchou is a pretty good niche meta. And it's just frail, unfortunately. Then another electric type that has some decent purpose is Elekid. Elekid outspeeds Lumineon and Pidgeot, which is huge. That is pretty much all that makes it rankable, because Pikachu would be better otherwise, right? I guess back to where we were before. Clamperl is highly niche, highly niche. I used to rank Clamperl in C+ because it was the best Baton Pass recipient in the tier, because Deep Sea Tooth makes it an absurd breaker. Otherwise, though, it's just worse than Octillery because it's frailer than Octillery. You can run this on Trick Room. If you want to make a Trick Room team, then Clamperl is the best Pokemon on that team style. Pretty by far, right? And Cranidos is a Pokemon that I'd say is C. I think that Cranidos is very inconsistent, but when it works, it actually does work pretty okay. Yeah, so then Dustox is next. Dustox is a pivot who is weak to Stealth Rock, and that is terrible. C-. It can technically do things, I just don't think it's good at doing things. Flaffy, I think, is UR. It wasn't ranked last time. It's a Heal Bell electric type. I guess it can kind of be a Pikachu check if you want it to be, but, like, why the fuck would you run it when it checks nothing else? Lickitung is also UR. If you want a Wish Passer, then Clefairy is better because it has Magic Guard. And then Wigglytuff also isn't really a Wish Passer, it's more of an offensive lead. It can be a Wish Passer if you want, though, because the fact that it can switch sets means that, like, Wigglytuff has some unpredictability around it, while Lickitung doesn't really, which means that Wigglytuff is actually a pretty okay C-ranked Pokemon, while Lickitung is just bad. Noctowl is another Pokemon I'd rank in C. It has Whirlwind, which can be really cool synergy of spikes. Otherwise, this thing offers basically nothing over any of its competition. It's a worse special wall than Kecleon, who has a better typing, isn't Stealth Rock weak, also has better utility options, because, also has better utility options for, like Thunder Wave, right? Thunder Wave is fucking crazy. Parasect is a complete unmon after we ban Sleep. It has no niche anymore. And then We move on to Poliwhirl. Poliwhirl as a tiny niche, as a belly drum sweeper, is a Pokemon that we almost never see, but it does get brought occasionally. It definitely has to be respected for that. Quilava is a Pokemon that you see, pretty much it's just a Choice Scarfer, really. It outspeeds fucking Vibrava and Mankey, but that's the only thing that really outspeeds the Choice Scarf. It can kind of be okay on Sun teams, I guess, if you want to run it. I think Quilava's worse than Flareon, though. Just run Flareon for the most part. But it has somewhat of a unique role. Stunky, yeah, Stunky was rated C last time. I think that's about where I put it this time. Stunky has a very good move pool. However, Stunky also, unfortunately, has a bad everything else. Like Pursuit, Sucker Punch, Explosion, great moves. And that pretty much carries it. What's the speed tier? It's slower than Ghastly, however, I guess that's not that big of a deal. And the reason why it's not that big of a deal is because it resists both of Ghastly's stabs, which means that I'm pretty sure Ghastly isn't 2-KOing it. Honestly, compared to the things that I have in like C, I think Stunky is low-key better than them. So I'm putting it in C+. Main reason why is because Boom Spam is really underexplored. I think that Explosion Spam Hyper Offense has some actually decent use case. And I think it has a lot of potential. So, fuck it, Stunky C+, why not? Togetic is kind of niche, but like it does stuff. Most of what it did was like Baton Pass and then Light Screen Cheese. Honestly, actually, and upon further inspection, I think it's more like C- now. Like the ban of Baton Pass did hurt it. It really did, because I can't Nasty Pass anymore. Trap Pinch got banned because Rain Trap is a dumb ability. So I'll put it in UR because that looks funny. And Wailmer has a tiny niche for being able to basically be faster version of Scarf Octillery with Self-Destruct, which technically gives it something. So yeah, that's my current VR, current personal VR for the DPP SU metagame. The metagame is evolving fast and it's changing quite a lot. It's crazy how the ban of Baton Pass alone has changed the metagame to such a degree. I'm very, very excited to play more of the metagame. And I'm so enthusiastic about DPPSU right now. This metagame rocks. Oh yeah, one last thing before I forget about it. Right, I have a Patreon. So if you want to support me via Patreon, you can do that. I have 4 different tiers, all different benefits. I'm not gonna go over them right now because I'm fucking lazy. But I also want to thank my Phantom tier patron Squizzy and my Confidant tier patrons Regimania and Eternum. Thank you very much for your consistent support on these videos, and I'll see you all next time.